Welcome to the Journey 2020. Charles Morris got a special treat for you today, very special surprise. So I'm happy to take part in today's show. Coming off the weekend, happy Monday to you. Hope you had a great weekend. This is the Journey 2020, been around since 2013, still here. And from time to time, and generally on each show, I always say how we started. And it was through the gentleman by the name of Dr. Robertson, who actually came up with the name of the show. And I always say, we kind of added the 2020 on it because we had to find a website that was available. And I always talk about the concept, how long I've been knowing Dr. Robinson. And so today, and I've been saying for a long time that Dr. Robinson is going to come back on the show. He promised me he was going to come back on the show. So today, guess what? The person who came up with the idea and the concept of the Journey 2020 is here with us today. And it's funny because I was trying to think okay, when did he stop doing the show and how long has it been? But then we can ask him because he's here. And here he is, Dr. John Robertson, who came up with the idea of the concept of the Journey 2020. Welcome back to the show. How long has it been?
Well, Charles, it's at least been about at least 5 years.
Okay.
But as you know, I've over time, when you've called on me, to come back and done my part. So I thank you for inviting me back on again.
Oh, well, if anybody has an open invitation, it would be you. And then
I
the thing of it
appreciate
is, and thank you so much because you also have played a very vital part in the Pastors Roundtable a while back when we had you on the Pastors Roundtable. I don't know if you remember coming on that. That was a good topic as
Yeah,
well, right?
yeah, that was really quite enjoyable, and yeah, and I do remember that quite clearly. I enjoyed it. I hope that the pastors were okay in putting up with me, but it was really one of the best experiences in the dialoguing with those pastors.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's something that we've been doing now, almost going on like 2 years now. So,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we do it once a month. So we've been getting some good feedback. But listen, there's been so
Great.
many things, and that's one of the things that I do miss, and that is tapping
Mm,
into you because there's been so much been going on over a period of time, and it's been challenging.
yeah.
Just saying it, with some of the questions that we have and people and talking and conversation. So right away, I just want to say, with all of that that's been going on, and I was talking to you about how has this overall, not just necessarily here in our country, but psychologically around the world, the impact of what we've been going through for the past 2 years.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't even know where to begin, Dr. Robinson, because I've been blown away by so many things. Like for an
Yeah.
example, people have to spend time together. And
Hmm.
they did they don't know how to spend time with people don't know how to spend time with their spouses, which is like
Right.
people don't know how to spend time with their kids. People don't,
Right.
and it's been, and like I don't know how to relate to that because I don't understand that because I can't imagine my mother not knowing how to spend time with me are in a relationship and now we got to spend time together and I'm looking at you like, I'm tired of looking at you right now, right?
Right. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
then and well, let's just talk about that for a second because I have so many
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
it's been challenging in ways that seems like it should be, but
Yeah.
what I guess as a culture, what we have evolved into, which I don't think is necessarily a good thing when you complaining about spending time with your child. I don't know, what's going
Ex-
on.
Exactly. Well, Charles, in our American society, we spend more time, on average, looking at our phones, looking at TV, um, looking at our text messages than we do in face-to-face communication. So what COVID and the various phases of lockdown have done is really had us having to encounter each other on a face-to-face basis. And with many of our families, um, it is wound up that almost, uh, them having to say, well, wait a minute, who are you again? So it didn't surprise me that folks would run into problems, but it did surprise me some of the stresses that people felt as they had to encounter each other over a long length of time. So yeah, it has been an eye opener in many ways.
Well, I don't know where to begin to try to. I think what is so odd for me is the true struggle that people have with it. I mean, I, you know,
Mm,
I, I see me understanding that, how as a parent you can kind of say jokingly, I got to spend time with him, jokingly, but these people are serious. They actually
hmm
struggling with this time that they spending together, and I'm like, and I try so hard to be that child, understand that
mm,
parent. It like I give you an example. This is something that I cannot relate to Dr. Robinson. This is,
sure.
and I'm serious. I give you a perfect example.
Mm,
We was told to sit and be quiet.
mm,
Now the parents needs gadgets to make the
hmm
kids sit and be quiet. And then
Yes.
when you say to them, like, when I was your kid age, we was told to be quiet, and that's what we had to do. And then they look at you like you crazy, like
Right.
like that's not possible, and that didn't happen. And so you look,
Right.
and you need these little things, these little substitutes, and you just like, I don't get it because I don't get it because parenting was this. Now it's like,
Yeah.
well, I just need to give you this so you be quiet. So
Yeah.
that's weird to me. I don't, again, that kind of stuff I don't understand.
Yeah. The times have definitely changed. Where number one, as you said, when parents said to a child, "Be quiet," that we were, whether out of love, respect, or fear, we were quiet. Today, if you say to many children, or let's say to the average child, "Be quiet," as you said, they have to look at you and say, "Why?" Okay. Um, and that would have been, if back in the day, that would have been a sure either trip to, in its most severe form to the hospital, you know, or, or, or the period, the giving you the eye to know that if you didn't get quiet, that the next move would have been to the hospital. And again, I say that lightly, but there is been a breakdown in how children relate to the parents. And so often parents, in saying to the child, be quiet, um, then don't know what the next step is other than to at times resort to getting that gadget out, and giving it to the child, or give very sadly ignoring the child, or on a third level, um, then out of frustration, then getting into a physical confrontation with the child. Okay, and I've encountered this in my practice where a parent trying to um, not even discipline a child, but give a child directions, has gotten into a physical confrontation with the child. So, in referring back to COVID, I think that COVID highlighted a lot of the problems and a lot of the changes that were already there, but because of the less distractions, um, that it really highlighted some of the difficulties that were already there in the parent to child relationship, the the person to person relationship as friends, and as the man to woman relationship in either a marriage, yeah, a friendship, etc. So, so COVID, in many ways, I believe, um, accentuated a lot of the problems that were already there.
Right, and actually, Dr. Robinson, the kids don't get my attention. I get the kids. It's the parents in which I struggle with, because when you turn to the parent, because the kid only is what you have allowed and what you have taught them, but the parents blow my mind, because when you look at them and you say to them, well, when I was a kid, I had no options but just to be quiet. And they look at you like you crazy.
Hmm. Hmm. Exactly.
like,
You know,
like whatever that was that my parent had, it don't exist no more. So it's just like, no, I got to
mm,
use this because I really have no other options.
right, exactly, exactly. Um,
And I
p-
think
and,
that's what makes it so strange to me, because it's just like, what? What you mean? I don't get it.
yeah. Well, in some ways, I have sympathy for today's modern day parent because, as you said, back in the day, there weren't that many options. Take, for instance, in many of our communities, I say many, so that not everyone had the same experience. But if our parent, and discipline us, that somehow we managed to, um, let's say, do something, um, there was at least, one other person in the neighborhood that would say, listen, did you know what I saw your child do? And that person would at times feel the, if you call it, the authority to either themselves verbally chastise that child, or more frequently, you know, touch base with your parents and say, listen, you need to really address this because little Johnny did X, Y, and Z. And so the old story is that before you got home, you know, your parent was saying, now, why did you let Miss So and so have to come to tell me what you were doing out there on the street? Okay. And so, and there was no such thing as, well, Miss So and so didn't tell you the truth. Um, that would only get you in more trouble. Okay. Um, and your parent would then go ahead and discipline. But nowadays, what is it? The script has flipped, so that that number one, um, the good neighbor is almost afraid to confront a child that is misbehaving, uh, for fear that either the parent is going to, get on their case to say, how dare you, try to tell my child what they ought to do. Um, that's one thing that happened. The other thing is that often when the child, the so-called, gets home, that parent will, at times um, be so quote unquote busy that they don't address the issue with the child at that time, um, or minimize it, so that the child begins to say, "Oh, it's no big thing," and so that the behavior itself may continue. And the other piece is that in terms of discipline, often, discipline may take the form of well, go in your room, and you know, uh, do a timeout, etc. Okay. Now, for many of our kids today, going in their room, is actually a benefit because they've got their what is it, PlayStation or whatever in there. They've got their iPhone or whatever. They've got their TV or a cable in there. So when the child parents said, "Go to your room," child said, "Hey, listen, no big thing, etc." So and I don't want to overemphasize the the complexity of what both our parents and our kids are facing, but that we have to come to realization that what was in terms of the parental control is very different today than it was back then.
Yeah, I was just addressing some kids 2 weeks ago, and I asked them a question. Oh, by the way, in my neighborhood, it wasn't like a person. It was like every other house had the authority. So every other house in the neighborhood had the authority, and because everybody was looking out for each other, and you couldn't dare talk back to anybody, especially an adult, and especially if it got back to your parents, like, oh, what did you what? No, so it was every other house.
Yeah.
So it wasn't.
Okay.
It was like everybody. But anyway, I was just asking some kids about 2 weeks ago, and I said, "Can you imagine you being in your classroom and you in first, second, third grade or whatever, junior high, and the teacher call you up and then she disciplined you in front of the class, and she took that little ruler and she hit you in the back of the leg and blah, 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 blah. And you did not want your parents to know that your teacher had to discipline you, let alone your parent is not going to side with you because you had nothing to say about it, and you was hoping that uh, that your parents didn't find out about it. And the other thing too, that and if the parent came to the school and they discipline you right in front of everybody in the classroom, and nobody said anything because everybody in that classroom said in their mind, that could be me next. So it wasn't like you was picked that everybody was going like, oh, well, I hope that ain't me next time. you know
Exactly.
Right. And
Exactly.
so,
Yep.
no, they were like, no, but they did, the kids kind of said, well, we do see that there is a little disrespect there and stuff like that. But they said, no, we really can't relate to that. But, yeah, we had more discipline then. It was more
Hmm.
discipline. And,
Exactly.
and the teachers looked out for you, and the parents understood that. It wasn't you, the parents against the teachers, and the parents and the teacher was always on the same side. So you had nowhere to
Exactly.
go but to sit up there like this, like, because first of all, you really couldn't say nothing. And even if you did
Yeah.
speak, what? Shut up. So because the parent
Exactly.
understood that the teacher had the best interest for the child. And that was the
Yeah. Exactly.
understanding. And so there wasn't no back and forth with the teacher. You just you listened to what the teacher had to say, and the teacher,
Right.
spoke, and like, you just, let me tell you what the child did today. Now you gotta like,
Right.
oh, really? Really? Oh, okay. Well,
Hmm.
thank you for letting me know. I got
Yeah,
this. Don't worry about it.
yeah, yeah. Well, I just want to touch on that a little bit. One of the things that has happened, and I can talk from my personal experience, is that the teachers of those days, I felt had more of a career dedication than I see in many of the teachers today. And one of the things that I used to remember is the I used to dread parent teacher nights because no matter how well I had done, I know that my parents hearing from the teachers, and the teachers would be complimentary, all right? But they would say, well, John is a little lazy in getting his homework in sometime. What I would get when they returned home was that, why are you giving the teacher a hard time and getting your homework in on time? Okay. And then at the end, they'd say, well, and yet she did say that you were getting A's in her class. But that aspect of being supportive of the teachers was there. The thing that I find is that many other teachers, and again, I have a lot of respect for today's teachers, but at times do not have, the skill or the temperament to deal with many of our kids. Um, so that there's another breakdown in that connection, that community connection between parent, uh, a teacher, and child. So you have many children going into school and feeling that they can act in a disrespectful way because that that parent is either not going to hear from the school or is going to hear from the school, maybe from the principal, who may not have a direct connection with that child, and they will and seldom can hear directly from the teacher who knows the child, and perhaps has had some contact with the parent. The other thing that I find is that with many of the parents, because of their own negative experience in school, will, instead of supporting the teacher in trying to discipline the child, will go ahead and go into school in a confrontational way, and saying, well, why are you trying to discipline my child? Okay. And again, there are some cases where teachers are inappropriate. But again, back in the day, and I hate to keep on saying back in the day, but this was a reality that if a child said, well, the teacher doesn't like me, I know at least my parent and many parents would say, well, it's not the teacher's job to like you. Okay. It is a teacher's job to teach you. All right. But how many parents would respond in that similar way today? So we have, again, a breakdown in that area.
I can share something similar to you back when I was doing my show on Orange TV. And I still remember it like just as clear as day, Dr. Robinson. I went to the actual place, and it was over in Eatonville. And what it was after school program. And this is where they would send the kids that were suspended. So if you were suspended for the week or however long, you had to go to this place. There are several of them throughout the county, but this particular place was in Eatonville. And so I had a couple of the school board members on there. I also had Kat Gordon and a few other people. So I had about 5 people on the panel, so on and so forth. And I never will forget this little girl. And so when I went over to her, I asked, so why did you get suspended? And so she got into this little confrontation with the teacher. And I never will forget when she stood up and she said, well, the teacher told me to sit down and shut up. And her response was whatever she said to the teacher. And the funny thing is, you can see everybody gesture or everybody's face was like, why didn't you just sit down and shut up?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Because whatever that was, when the teacher told her to just sit down and shut up, she went and told the mom. And so she was a reflection of the mom, because the mom is like, why are you telling my
Mm.
child to sit down and shut up? So
Hmm.
where I'm from is just like, but this is the deal, Dr. Robinson.
Yeah.
I don't have kids, but I know in
Mm.
life you spend 99.9% of the time trying to discipline your kids because they're children. And that's part of
Hmm.
what you do throughout the day. You have
The
to tell
pain.
them
Yeah.
this, you have to tell them that. And as a parent, you should understand that. So you shouldn't have to go to a teacher to say you had to tell my child to do what? Because that's what you do
Mm.
with children.
Yeah.
That's what you
Exactly.
do. And so to be
Yeah.
upset and like, really? So there's something
Hmm.
wrong. It's just right up there with trying to understand, wait a minute, you got to give your child a what to be quiet? So in the
Mm.
parenting of understanding some of the little simple things, and then the thing of it is, Dr. Robinson, you got to know this ain't the first time this done happened with your child.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to
Exactly.
know that, because this child is going to be consistent in who they are, and it
Right.
just blows my mind. It's just amazing. But let me ask you this right here:
Yeah.
can you tap into and tell us some of the positive things that has transpired with the virus and some of the negative things that has transpired with the virus when it comes to the
Mm.
fact of us socializing, not socializing, and via the internet? So some of the negative, some of
Mm.
the positive, and some of the things that
Mm.
we have found out about ourselves, good, bad, or however you want to put it.
Yeah. 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 I tell you, COVID has really raised a lot of um, old traumas in our African American community, and by that I mean when the concept of uh, a COVID infecting folks, uh, you know, got to be part of the issue was whether the information about COVID was accurate or not. And for many Black folks, it raised the specter of the issue of the Tuskegee, experiment that we know where Black men were allowed to, um, were tested, found to have syphilis, and as part of the experiment, were allowed to uh, progress or not be treated for the disease, um, as a part of a government study. So when COVID first came around, some of the echoes of the Tuskegee experiment, were raised. Then, and as another negative, the vaccines came into play. That also triggered another trauma to now say, well, with the vaccine, is it going to do something negative to us instead of being a lifesaver? So those negatives, got raised. But one of the things, and this is more anecdotal than not, but in my age group, people sought out accurate information from reliable sources within the community, um, and would often go to either their Black reliable news sources. And I have to say, within my church group, um, that there was very little question about whether we should get vaccinated or not, because folks said, listen, um, I don't want to be taken out of here um, following someone's foolish advice that and people shared the research that they did, often online with their young, let's say, niece, nephew, grandchild who happened to be, let's say, a nurse or in public health, or some of us lucky enough to know a friend of a friend who is a doctor, etc. And I have to say, in my church community, almost everyone made their own individual decision to get vaccinated. Okay. And surprisingly, well, I should say surprisingly, we took a look within our church as to how many COVID deaths that we had. And were pleasantly surprised to know that we had very few, COVID related deaths. In contrast to some areas of our community, and Charles, you remember the numbers coming out of the high numbers of deaths that we had in the Orange County here in Florida, and how many deaths that we had within the Black community. Because at one point, I was hearing almost like every other day someone else who had passed because of COVID. So that was on the negative side. Okay, the positive side is that I believe that to a large extent our community responded, and and to a large part did make individual decisions to get vaccinated, and then when the booster came out, also you got boosted. Now, on the positive side, with COVID, um, just as you were talking about at the beginning of the program, many people having difficulty staying together. Um, there were also um, families that, because of now not being able to, travel or hold a Thanksgiving a dinner together, etc., held virtual Thanksgiving dinners. Okay, and were able to connect at times with relatives that they hadn't talked to or seen some in years, through making those virtual connections. The other thing that I saw is that some of our folks in the community that were either actually, I call it anti computer, or just said, well, Zoom and and the internet, that's for the young folks. I don't have time for that. And just as a personal experience, I saw my sister-in-law who, just said, she wasn't going to mess with the this whatever they were doing with the computers. And I call her now a an internet bandito, because she is looking up information on everything using her phone, because she doesn't even have a laptop, but she you know learned how to get on the internet on her phone, and she's just looking up everything. Um, and this is a person today. Um, my sister-in-law was calling my wife up, saying, "Listen, have you been watching what's going on with the Katanji Jackson? That they were so disrespectful to her, and I was just listening on MSNBC on their program that they streaming, that they had some of these senators talking all kind of stuff, and I'm getting ready to call up mine, and give them my and I'm saying, wow, what a change, um, and this is a young lady who is, I think she is 79 now, okay, but has learned to use the technology, and quite frankly, the power that is contained in that technology to the positive. Okay.
Uh,
Um, so, but this is just some of the changes that I saw happening.
Now, the other part of that too was maybe in your sessions, even in your group of your peers, a discussion about
Mm,
how psychologically, mentally, it has affected us when there have been
yeah,
so many people who have passed away.
yeah.
Because I know in 1 week I had one of my best friends who was my mechanic pass away on a Monday. Then
Mm,
on the next day, a Tuesday, my roommate from when I was a freshman in college, who we remained friends all these years, he passed away. And
mm,
then that Thursday, my aunt, but she passed away because she was 96 years old. But just the whole that it took me to a place of just numbness. I was just numb of someone, two, three people that I was very, very close to. That in the span of a week, in addition to some other people that I knew who had passed away from the virus, and
mm.
then there's always the thought of those that have the virus, and you don't know, does that mean that they're going to pass away as well? And then, for an example, early on, this was my experience when it first started, Dr. Brown. I was trying to tell people, I said,
Mm,
see, y'all don't understand. This is a day by day thing, and people don't know what that means. I said, they're learning as they go. So when this thing first started 2 years ago, I had a friend who was going back and forth for a month, had all the symptoms
mm,
now, but was testing
mm.
negative.
Oh
Okay.
my.
So
Mm,
finally, after 30 days, she came back positive, but she had all the symptoms, and she spent maybe 3 months in the hospital or more. And when she
mm,
finally got out of the
mhm.
hospital a year later, she's in a wheelchair. But my point that I'm
Oh
saying, now
my.
mind you, she's in her 40s, I guess, like in her 40s.
Yeah,
But my point of it is that for 30 days she was testing negative.
yeah,
The test was coming back negative, but now, but she was going through all the symptoms. So
yeah,
it's just little things like that of how it just affected people differently, and psychologically and mentally, you just didn't know what to think, what to do, or how to handle it, or who was going to be next, or
yeah,
and then they made it so political.
yeah,
That's what made it worse, because I would say
yeah.
you can't use common sense. That just flies out the window. you
Mm,
know. So can you
mm.
kind of speak on that for a minute?
Yeah, yeah. I'm really glad, Charles, that you touched on that because the sense as you were talking about that, it brought back that sense of grief and loss that just about everybody in our country and in our community uh, is feeling and has felt through COVID. The loss of individuals who are near and dear to us, the sense of loss of if you want to call it loss of freedom, in terms of being out and about, being able to just go where we want to, when we want to, etc. The whole controversy around lockdowns, etc. Um, it does bring back that sense of uh, us being in a different place, but that sense of grief, and as you said, leading to a sense of numbness, I think is still very much with us. Um, and so, while we're on the downside, hopefully, of COVID, many of us have yet to really grieve over the losses that we experienced with the loved ones, the buddies, the friends that that have been lost to COVID. And psychologically, that feeling at times of hopelessness or more to bear helplessness as we were going through that period, especially before the development of vaccines. Um, you know, and people feeling, well, am I going to get it? Am I going to die? Um, are the people who I love and care about, are they going to die? So that sense of helplessness I saw in my practice among young people, a sense of being fearful about COVID. And although it was said back then that COVID wasn't affecting young people as severely as it was affecting the adults, etc. But for many of the kids that we saw, they were concerned about how the COVID was going to affect grandma, how it was going to affect mom and dad, and also affect some of the adult people in their family. So uh, that was one of the things that I saw. And then between couples, um, what I also saw clinically was that in terms of it spending more time together, I saw couples who had been living I call it cohabitating. In other words, living basically as roommates, but tolerating each other, etc. Now that they had to be together uh, at times 24/7 or near that, now all of the little annoyances began to flare up like big bonfires, of discontent. And I found that people who were tolerating each other as couples now began to come into therapy, into treatment, and saying, "Listen, I'm ready for a divorce," you know, or or I'm moving out, or I just can't stand him, one more minute. So a lot of the sensitivities that were blunted by being able to have time away from each other, now with COVID, it got more emphasized. So those are just some of the things that I saw.
Yeah, I actually had a friend who actually they've been together for a while, and I think they've been together for about maybe 13 years. But he was a
Mm-hmm.
truck driver, so he spent a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time away from home. And now
Mm-hmm.
that he something, yeah, actually, he was having a little illness. It wasn't COVID, but it was something else. But in addition to COVID, he was now not able to go on the road. And she was like,
Mm-hmm.
Charles, I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know. Oh
Mm-hmm.
my goodness. But
Mm-hmm.
the other part of that too, Doc Robinson, is that I think, well, let me ask you, have you had to do any counseling? And if so, what has it been like when it comes to people who can't attend funerals and you can't bury your loved ones? Because that was a point where
Mm-hmm.
I was
Yeah.
asked, like for an example, when it first started, I was asked to go videotape, and there were only allowed maybe about like 9 people at the burial site. They were not allowed to
Mm-hmm.
go to the church. So people, and I probably did about 4 or 5 of those. Then I know some other people that I wasn't hired to do, but I know that there are people who were not allowed. And one of my mentors, I felt so bad for him because his mother died in a nursing home and he couldn't attend the funeral. So,
Mm-hmm.
have you? What has that been like? And have you had to do some counseling on that as well?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Um, the for many individuals who died during these past couple years, that sense of not being able to reach closure, um, you know, either in uh, having that last moments, with their loved one, or not being able to attend a actual funeral service, where with many individuals being buried, that the only thing that could be done at the time was a graveside ceremony, um, that left a sense of incompletion for many folks. So yeah, we've had to counsel folks, on that, with a sense of at times being able to uh, create later on, and this has just been within the last several months, um, ways in which they now can visit the gravesite, of their loved one, and and have that maybe final conversation that they wanted to have, or to have that you know, little memento that they wanted to have go into the coffin with the loved one. Now to leave it at the gravesite, or to gather with the family around that at that burial site, you know, and for the family then have their own, a farewell ceremony. We've had to do things like that to get to a sense of closure with those individuals. One of the things that happened, um, because at times the number of people that had died, were that funeral parlors began to themselves have virtual funerals, and that was one of the adjustments, where I had a cousin of mine die in New York, and there was no way in the midst of COVID that we were going to try to fly up there, on a plane, and get to the funeral. But the funeral home, really, and they did a really good job of this, um, allowed people literally from across the country um, to to log in, and we were able to see the funeral service. And as I was talking about, not seeing folks, be able to see relatives that we hadn't seen in many years, and be able to say, with some of our young relatives, be able to say, well, wait a minute, is that so and so? I don't even recognize. Now he's 16 or 17, and I knew him when he was in diapers. So there was, once the some of our technology adjusted to it, I think it gave another way of people being able to mourn, but still that sense of personal connection was something at times that was left missing.
You know, it's for a lot of people that I knew that I was involved that I knew of. They actually postponed the service. They said we will
Hmm.
do the service at some other time. See, I got a friend here.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
yeah,
all right.
yeah.
So
But
he,
yeah,
he
that's
wants
Lily.
he wants a little
Yeah, that's
time
Lily.
also.
You know,
Okay.
it's around because it's almost time to eat. But
Ah,
but
okay, okay.
but they were they they said that, well, we're not able to do this right now, and so what we're gonna do is I've been associated with several people who said we're gonna do this like maybe 8 months from now, or when we think it's better, we will
Mm-hmm.
have the memorial service then. But I'll tell you something that I experienced that I'd never experienced before. You know, Dr. Robinson, over the years, me being in the field that I'm in, I have done so many weddings over the period of years, and I also have videotaped funerals as well, quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a
Mm-hmm.
first about 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
The gentleman's mother passed away. I think she was 80. I think she was about 86 years old, somewhere around up in there. So I left early because I left the church early because I wanted to go and set up at the burial site. So when they come in, I'm able to get my video footage and I'm all set, ready to go. And so I get there. This is here in the Orlando area, and it was neat the way the grave site have things set up, because when you pull in, they have things color coded. So you look at the names of the people who have service that day, and you just follow the color, and the color will take you where you're supposed to go. So I looked up,
Mm-hmm.
and the name was not on the board.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm
Okay.
looking, and I'm like, so a gentleman who works there was coming on his cart. And so I stopped him. I said, "Hey, excuse me, can you help me find the service for such and such?" And he said, "It's not up there on the board." I said, "No." He said, "Well, you sure you at the right graveyard?" I was like, "Graveside." I was like,
Oh.
Yeah." So I said, "Well," I said, "here's the program. Look at the program, and what does the program say?" He looked at
Mm-hmm.
it. He said, "Oh." So he called the office. And when he spoke to the office, he turned around and looked at me, and he said, "There's a problem," which means
Mm.
they didn't do the order to set up for the burial.
Oh my. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I called a gentleman who had hired me to do the videotaping, and I said,
Really?
such and such. I said, "Hey man, your mother is not on the list for service today. You need to call them." Because at
Mm.
that time they were about maybe 10 minutes away. So
Oh
he said,
my.
"Okay, let me give them a call." And for sure, she was not on service that day.
Oh my.
So that was a first for me. So I was like, because
Yeah.
I've done many funerals, and I'm like, oh my goodness, you
Yeah.
got the people coming in to, for the service of this
Right.
person.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay. But they when they pulled in, they sat about 35 minutes, and they set up a mock memorial, because that was a Saturday.
Oh.
They set up a mock
Uh-huh.
memorial for her, and then they would come back and then bury her on Monday. And of course, the managers came out and was very apologetic and everything, of course.
Mm.
But I guess the
Mm.
whole, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about, how psychologically that would be,
Mm.
spiritually, or whatever that is. But then
Mm.
where I'm from and my people, not like some people that may have handled that differently, because they handled it
Uh,
very well. They handled it very
okay.
well,
Yeah.
because my people I know would have said the important thing is that we're providing the service right now, and we will take and
Mm.
bury her that Monday. But right now, for this day, this will work. But I know,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Robinson,
Yeah.
you know some people
Oh,
that would have
oh
went
yeah.
off.
But I hate to put it this way, that they would have performed. Okay. Exactly. Exactly. You know. So and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that's one of the things with the with COVID and the amount of deaths that we've had, that it has really changed the way that funeral services and memorials, are held. So that experience that you had, I think, epitomizes the kind of changes and the different kind of glitches that can have happen, in that whole process. So that's well understood. Yeah.
Well, before you leave, a couple of things I want to ask. First of all, for those out there who may be struggling with some things from A to Z, a part of this, and some other things that may need your services, could you give your
Mhm.
information in case they say, you know what, I think I need to talk with Dr. Robinson, or whatever. Could you
Oh,
give your information?
be
And
glad to.
before you do that, how you think, because people think that they don't understand that we're not out of this thing. People don't
Right.
realize that we're not out of it by no way, form, or fashion. And there's like I think in one of the other countries, it's the numbers are climbing again, which
Yep.
means that it's going to climb here as well.
Yeah.
So, but how you think that we're that we well, I guess you really can't answer that question. How we may handle this in the future, where
Mm.
we are mentally and emotionally,
Mhm.
even to this day.
Mm. Yeah. As you said, with COVID, it has posed a situation that we've not encountered before. But I think in some ways, it is also three things that I think about. Psychologically, I think for many individuals, it has made us realize how vulnerable we are to diseases of various kinds, and that despite our medical and technological advances, that something like a little virus can just devastate a whole population. So I think that it, to me, has increased our sense of vulnerability as a people. The other thing that it has done is that it has also, because, Charles, as you said, of the politicization of of the virus, it has also made us look more closely and question our media and the information that we've gotten from those various media sources. And for many of us, it has made us take a look at not just accepting one source of information, but really taking a look at multiple sources of information to come to a consensus as to what we can do. And thirdly, that in terms of our resilience as a people, I think it is also for many of us um, had us take a look at our um, physical, psychological, and I dare say our spiritual life in a more in depth way. That it is, as we looked at each one of those things, our physical health, our psychological health, and our spiritual health, I think it's made us look a little bit closer and a little bit deeper as to what that really means for each of us moving forward.
Well, I'm going to have you give out your information, but let me say this:
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to come back on the show. There's still a lot that I would like to talk about, but
Sure.
one of the things that I would like, and let me see if I can phrase this right, because I think it has more to do more so with spiritual as it does psychological.
Mm.
But I would like to talk to you about the psychological impact of 45 being the president. What
Oh
he
boy.
or no, well, what he spoke into, and
Hmm.
then associated with what we're talking about with the virus, because
Mm.
it became political more so. And that's what I mean. People can't use common sense. That it
Yeah.
became something in which that I would love to talk about for what it became and how it
Yeah.
kind of showed what may have been kind of like buried, but
Mm.
it it rose, and now it was fertilized,
Mm.
and it blossomed, and now
Yep.
it's kind of like this growing wild weed that
Right.
seems to be out of
Yeah.
control, and it's like there is nothing to, or no, I shouldn't say nothing, but it's spreading to the point that it's really, I'm trying to say, saying who we really are and how we really
Mm.
feel, that we
Mm.
was in denial, some of us, about the true essence of who we are, how we feel about each other and our differences.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Not only does it make sense, but Charles, from my perspective, I think it's a badly needed continuing conversation because just as you said about COVID, we are also not out of the effects of 45, on our general society and on our well-being. So, so absolutely yes, I'd be more than willing to come back, at some point and really discuss that. So thank you.
Okay, all right, well, good. So give out your information so people, in case, you know
Okay.
what, be like, you know what, Dr. Robinson, I'm kind of stuck here and I just want to put my fingers around my spouse's or my children's throat and I'm trying not to. Can you help me?
I hear you. Well, listen, before you put your fingers around your children's throat, okay, we can, and I say we because my practice is five other clinicians and myself, but we're Robertson and Associates Psychological Services. We're located at 4019 Clarkona Ocoee Road in Orlando. We're in a standalone building. Um, all of our services are confidential, and we provide services to most of the insurances in the Central Florida area. The only service that we're not providing currently is services to Medicaid, and so we plan to be back, in uh, accepting Medicaid later in the year, but we're not able to do that now. And so, to find us, if you will, on the internet, if you look at Psychology Today, and we can be found, just put Robertson and Associates, Orlando, Florida, in there, and you'll find us. So again, our service is welcoming. We go by insurance. We also have a sliding scale based on family income, because our intent is to be as helpful to the community as possible. And Charles, thank you for the time, and thank you for the invitation.
Oh, come on, Dr. Robinson. Okay, this is the man who came up with the show idea, the concept. He used to be my partner in crime, and I always say this on the show. I said, Dr. Robinson had to kind of stop doing the show because he came so busy, and I'm trying to figure out that's really a good thing.
I
They're like,
hear you.
wait a minute.
Thank
We need more. Oh, I mean, it's good for him, but is it? Oh, but anyway, I make that little joke. So, but this
I
is the
hear you.
gentleman who came up with the Journey 2020 back in the summer of 2013, and that's when we started and how we started. And so, Dr. Robinson, how
Wow.
you would say
Okay.
the journey is from me to you, and from you, go ahead and tell
You
us.
to me. Okay. And the journey is from you to me and from me to you, and so that, and I'm going to add a little new line onto it until we can journey together to where we want to be.
And reach a higher level. See that? You forgot that
There
part,
you
right?
go. There you go. All right.
So we can reach a high
Oh,
level. That's
there
all
you
right.
go.
That's Dr.
All
John
right.
Robertson. He is a clinical psychologist here in the Orlando area. And again, Dr. Robertson, give us your phone number and your location before we get out of here.
Okay, right. I didn't give a phone number. Our phone number is 407-297-1185. And we're located at 4019 Parcona Ocoee Road, Orlando, and our zip is 32810.
All right. Well, again, this is the gentleman who came up with the idea of the Journey 2020. We always welcome him to be on the show at any time, and looking forward to him coming back, because I would love to have that conversation with him, for him to talk about who we are and where we are since 45 has been in office. That which goes together with how we stand and how we look at this virus and all the controversy that is, but is not, but we made it so. So would love to hear what they have to say about that. So you can look forward to that coming up here on the Journey 2020. Well, we come to you every Monday at 7 p.m. And you can go and make sure that you connect to us on Twitter and Facebook, and you make sure that you like us on YouTube as well as Facebook. So, Dr. Robinson, hope that you're feeling well. You tell the wife that I'd say hello and appreciate you for her allowing you to give me a little bit of your time.
Yeah, same to then, Charles. Welcome, and again, good health to you and France. Take care.
Uh, all right, as I say, the Journey 2020, where you can reach us by email, of course, and also, I would say, like I always say, the word comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of the Lord. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. You be blessed.